Undercover boss buys a sandwich at his own diner, stops cold when he hears two cashiers. Some truths don't scream, they whisper. And sometimes, it's not in the grand gestures, but in the quiet, stolen moments, when a person's real character is revealed. Elliot Granger had built a small empire, one sandwich at a time. His diners dotted the country, beloved for their nostalgic charm, and simple food that warmed both stomach and heart. But success has a way of putting distance between a man and his beginnings. He hadn't stepped inside one of his diners as a customer in over a decade, until that chilly Wednesday morning. Disguised in a wrinkled hoodie and jeans, Elliot entered the Silver Spoon Diner, the flagship location where it all began. He only wanted a sandwich, maybe some coffee. What he got instead stopped him in his tracks. Behind the counter, two young women laughed in whispers, not knowing the man who built the very counter they leaned on was sitting just feet away. But what they said wasn't just workplace chatter. It was something darker, something Elliot wasn't prepared to hear. They spoke of an overworked single mother, doing double shifts, scraping by with pennies, and how this management punished her for being kind. And in that moment, the sandwich no longer mattered. What mattered was the truth, and the reckoning it demanded. What Elliot Granger would do next would change not just one woman's life, but his own. Because sometimes, the richest people aren't the ones in suits, but the ones who show up every day, even when no one's watching. It was the kind of place most people would drive past, without noticing. The Silver Spoon Diner sat on the corner of an aging strip mall in Oak Falls, a quiet town where everyone knew everyone, sometimes too well. The sign was faded, the chrome trim dull with age, and the windows were fogged from years of frying bacon and brewing coffee. But inside, it felt like home. And for 28-year-old Jamie Lynn Carter, it was home, or at least the closest thing to it. She'd started working at the Silver Spoon 6 years ago, originally just to cover the bills, after her husband walked out and left her with a toddler and a stack of unpaid rent notices. Now, it was her everything. Every morning, Jamie arrived before dawn. She'd wipe down tables, refill syrup bottles, start the coffee. Strong and black, just how the regulars liked it. Hair uniform? Always crisp. Apron tied tight. Dark curls pinned back in a bun. Tired, eyes yes, but kind. She never let her personal struggles shadow her smile. Jamie lived modestly. A 2-bedroom apartment above an old bakery, with peeling wallpaper, and a creaky floorboard in the hallway. Her son, Mason, was 7, bright-eyed, obsessed with dinosaurs, and the only reason she got out of bed some mornings. She didn't have much. No savings, no car, and certainly no health insurance. But what she did have, she poured into the people around her. Extra sandwiches for elderly customers who forgot their wallets. Rides for coworkers whose buses never came. Tutoring a dishwasher's daughter, right there in the back booth, with worksheets and crumpled napkins. But being kind didn't pay the bills. And recently, kindness had cost her shifts. Her manager, Rick, a man with a clipboard and a superiority complex, didn't like distractions. That's what he called her helping others. He docked her hours, said she was too involved. She tried to protest, but he dismissed her like she was nothing. Still, Jamie kept showing up, kept smiling, because quitting wasn't an option. Not when Mason needed shoes, not when the heating bill loomed, and her mother's medical debt was growing. Jamie didn't dream big. She couldn't afford to. Her only hope was to survive, until maybe life got a little easier. And that hope, that stubborn, flickering candle, was what made her remarkable. What she didn't know, as she wiped down the counter that morning, was that someone very important had just walked through the door. Someone whose eyes were sharp, whose ears were open, and whose heart long shielded by boardrooms and bottom lines, was about to be cracked wide open. The next hour would change her life. But it started, as most miracles do, with something small. A sandwich order from a stranger. The bell above the diner's front door jingled. A soft, almost apologetic sound, as Elliot Granger stepped inside. He looked nothing like a CEO. Gone was the tailored navy suit, the polished Italian shoes, the sleek Rolex that once defined his presence. Instead, a faded gray hoodie with fraying sleeves, jeans with a grease stain on one knee, a Red Sox cap pulled low over his salt and pepper hair. Even his shoes were scuffed. An intentional touch. He moved slowly, eyes scanning the place he had once poured his soul into. The Silver Spoon Diner, his first restaurant, started with borrowed money and second-hand booths. Now, it was one of 87 diners across 5 states. And he hadn't been here in over 11 years. Slipping into a corner booth, Elliot didn't pull out his phone, didn't open a laptop. He just sat, watched, listened. A young waitress with tired eyes and a warm smile approached. Hanam attack read, Jamie. Morning, she said, tucking a loose strand of hair behind her ear. Coffee? Yes, please. Elliot replied, deepening his voice, slightly trying to sound less familiar. Black. Jamie returned moments later with a steaming mug. You want to look at a menu? Nah, he said, glancing at the specials board. How's the turkey club? Her smile widened, just slightly. Honestly? It's the best thing we've got. But tell Joe to go easy on the mayo, he gets carried away sometimes. Elliot chuckled, genuinely amused. Thanks for the tip. She walked away, calling out the order to the kitchen with practiced rhythm. As she did, Elliot leaned back, letting the comfort of the place soak into him. He recognized the jukebox in the corner, still broken, the same chipped tile behind the counter, same booth cushions. Though now, they sagged more. But it was what he overheard next that made him freeze. 2 cashiers, young, mid-20s, stood behind the register, speaking in hushed tones, unaware that the man who owned their future was sitting just 15 feet away. I can't believe Rick cut Jamie's hours again, one muttered. All because she stayed late to help that old guy who forgot his wallet. She's too nice. That's her problem, the other whispered. Management doesn't care about heart. They just want fast hands and quiet mouths. Elliot narrowed his eyes. His heartbeat picked up. She's got a kid, you know, the first added. Little boy, cute as a button. I don't know how she's making it. I heard she skips lunch some days just so he can eat dinner. Elliot's stomach twisted. He looked at Jamie, now refilling coffee at a booth of retirees. Still smiling. Still listening to stories about grandkids. And aching knees. She should be manager, one cashier said softly. Not Rick. That man wouldn't lift a finger to help anyone. The register beeped. A customer stepped up. The conversation ended. But Elliot couldn't unhear it. A storm of emotions brewed inside him. Shame, anger, disbelief. He had created this place to offer second chances. It was supposed to be a beacon of dignity for people like Jamie, not a corporate machine that chewed through kindness. And here she was, an unsung hero, barely holding on, being punished for being good. When Jamie returned with his sandwich, he looked up at her, truly looked. You've been here a while? He asked, casually. 6 years, she said. Feels like a lifetime. And you like it? She hesitated. I love the people. The work? Depends on the day. Elliot smiled faintly. That's fair. Their eyes met for a moment. Just a flicker. But something passed between them. A recognition. A weight she carried. And a promise he hadn't made yet. He took a bite of the sandwich. Too much mayo, just like she said. But something much bigger than a meal was beginning. He had come in search of perspective. He found purpose. The lunch rush was slow that day. A rare gift in the world of diners. The Silver Spoon's usual hum was softer, less chaotic. Jamie moved gracefully through it, taking orders, topping off coffee, offering warm smiles that felt like sunshine on a cloudy day. Elliot remained in his booth, quietly observing her. He didn't yet know how he'd step in, or even if he should. All he knew was, something about Jamie struck him deeply. Her patience, her sincerity, the quiet strength behind her exhaustion. He'd finished his turkey club, too much mayo, just as she'd predicted, and was nursing his coffee when he reached into his back pocket. Nothing. A sharp jolt of embarrassment surged through him. Of all days. Of all places. He patted his other pockets. Still nothing. His wallet must have slipped out in the Uber. Or maybe was still sitting on his kitchen counter at home. Jamie approached, dropping off the check with a gentle smile. Take your time. No rush. Actually, Elliot muttered, face flushing. I don't have my wallet. I'm so sorry. I must have left it at home. Yamia blinked surprised. But only for a second. Then she smiled again. Softer this time. It's okay, she said quickly. Don't worry about it. No, really, I'll figure something out. Maybe I can call someone. Sir, she interrupted gently, placing a hand on the edge of the table. It's just a sandwich. Everyone forgets things. She paused, then added with a kind, steady gaze. And besides, you look like you needed the meal more than the diner needed your money today. Elliot stared at her. She wasn't being performative. She wasn't playing for pity or praise. She meant every word. He leaned in slightly. You won't get in trouble, she shrugged, glancing around to make sure Rick wasn't watching. Let them try. I'll say I made a mistake on the register. It's worth it. Why? He asked softly, genuinely curious. Why go through the trouble? For a stranger. Yamia paused. Then she looked him in the eye. Because when I was 19, she said slowly, I came in here broke and scared. With a hungry baby and a maxed out credit card. A waitress covered my meal. No questions asked. She breathed in, voice steady. She probably doesn't even remember. But I do. Elliot's throat tightened. She gave me more than food, Jamie continued. She gave me a moment of peace, when I needed it most. So, I tried to pass it on. He looked down at the table. Speechless, Jamie gave him a reassuring pat on the shoulder. Pay it forward when you can. That's all I ask. With that, she moved away, leaving Elliot in stunned silence. That moment, simple, fleeting, unassuming, hit him harder than any business deal, any award, any headline. Here was a woman who had nothing to spare, and still gave, who should have been bitter, but chose to be better. For a few minutes, Elliot just sat there, staring at the empty plate, feeling the heat of something unfamiliar rise in his chest. Gratitude. Humility. Shame. She had no idea who he was. And yet, she had shown him more grace than most of the executives in his boardroom ever had. As Jamie helped a mother calm her fussy toddler, at the next booth, Elliot made a silent vow. He wouldn't forget this. And he wouldn't let her kindness go unrewarded. Because in a world that so often rewards cruelty and overlooks compassion, someone had to start tipping the scale back the right way. And that someone was him. Elliot returned the next day. Same booth. Same hoodie. Same quiet curiosity. Jamie noticed him the moment he walked in, her expression flickering with surprise, then a touch of amusement. Well, she said as she approached. You came back. Forgot your wallet again? Elliot chuckled. Not this time, he said, patting his back pocket with a wink. Figured I owed you a proper meal. You don't owe me anything, she replied, setting down a mug of coffee. No need to ask. But I won't stop you from ordering something. He smiled. Turkey Club. No mayo this time. Jamie laughed. Learning fast. Who? Over the next hour, the two talked more than most strangers ever do. It started simple. Harmless chatter. How the jukebox hadn't worked in years. How the booths had permanent squeaks. How old man Bill always asked for extra bacon, even though his doctor said no. But then, Elliot asked something deeper. So, what would you do if you didn't have to be here every day? Yami posed the question, catching her off guard. I don't know, she admitted, wiping her hands on her apron. I guess I'd go back to school. Maybe become a nurse. A nurse? He repeated, genuinely intrigued. She nodded. My mom was a nurse before she got sick. She used to tell me it's not about the medicine. It's about being there, when people are scared. Helping them feel seen. Heard. Elliot leaned forward. Listening, truly listening. But I can't afford school, she continued, her voice softening. I've got Mason to think about first. He's only 7, but he's already asking why I'm always tired. Why I work on weekends. Elliot swallowed hard. Must be tough. Jamie gave a half smile. It is. But he's the best thing in my life. When he hugs me before I go to work, I feel like I can survive anything. There was a quiet strength in her voice. One forged through hardship, but not hardened by it. Elliot sipped his coffee, pretending to be just another customer, though his heart was anything but ordinary right now. Each word she spoke peeled back another layer of a life lived under pressure, with grace, with grit, with sacrifice. You ever get help? He asked gently. Jamie shook her head. I've learned not to expect it. People say they'll be there, but life gets in the way. So I just keep showing up. Elliot didn't speak for a moment. He was absorbing it all. The cracks in her voice, the resilience behind the sadness, the quiet pride of someone who refused to be a victim. You deserve a break, he said finally. Jamie raised an eyebrow, amused. You planning to buy me a vacation? He laughed. You never know. Maybe I'll win the lottery. Well, if you do, she said, smiling. Just buy a new toaster for the kitchen. Ours keeps burning the bagels. Elliot grinned. But inside, he was already making mental notes. Not just about the toaster. About her. About what she'd endured. What she dreamed of. And how much of her soul she gave to a place that didn't return the favor. He left a generous tip that day. $20 on a $12 check. But more than the money, he left with a deeper understanding of Jamie Lynn Carter. She wasn't just a waitress. She was a mother. A fighter. A dreamer buried under survival. And for the first time in years, Elliot felt something stir inside him. Not just guilt, but purpose. And maybe a chance to make something right. It was Friday morning, when the storm hit. Not outside, but inside the Silver Spoon Diner. Elliot arrived early, a few minutes after sunrise, hoping to catch Jamie before the rush. He sat quietly at his usual booth, sipping coffee, waiting. But something felt different that morning. The air inside was thick. The rhythm off. The smiles were tighter. The laughter absent. Jamie emerged from the back room, with a pale face and red-rimmed eyes. She walked stiffly, her steps slower than usual, and avoided meeting anyone's gaze. Elliot's brow furrowed. She walked up to his booth, setting down the menu, without her usual warmth. Morning, she mumbled. Everything okay? He asked. Yeah, she said too quickly. Just tired. But Elliot had seen that look before. It wasn't tiredness. It was defeat. Minutes later, the truth unfolded. Rick, the manager, marched out of the kitchen, with the kind of swagger only small men in temporary power can carry, clipboard in hand, smirk on his face. He pulled Jamie aside near the soda fountain. Unaware, Elliot could hear every word. From the next booth over. I warned you, Jamie. Rick barked in a low voice. You think I don't know you gave away that meal to that homeless-looking guy earlier this week? You think this is a charity? That wasn't, she started. I checked the register. I know you zeroed out that ticket. You've been warned before. This is your second strike. Elliot felt a cold knot form in his stomach. I covered it myself, Jamie said, her voice trembling. It was $9. I left the cash in the tip jar. That's not protocol, Rick snapped. You don't make those calls, I do. It was just one time, she pleaded. One too many, Rick said. So here's what's happening. You're off weekends for the next 2 months. A pause. That's when the tips are best. And you clearly need to learn a lesson. Jamie's breath caught. But Rick, weekends are when I pay for Mason's school supplies. I can't. Not my problem, he sneered. You want sympathy? Talk to someone else. You want to keep this job? Keep your head down and follow the rules. Rick stormed off, leaving Jamie standing there, frozen, hands trembling at her sides. Elliot sat there, his coffee untouched, fury bubbling inside him like boiling oil. The way Rick spoke to her, the smugness, the injustice of punishing someone for showing human decency, and all over a sandwich she had paid for herself. This wasn't just bad management. This was moral failure. Jamie returned to his booth. A few minutes later, eyes glistening, shoulders hunched. I'm sorry, she said quietly. Today's not my best. You don't have to apologize, Elliot said gently. She nodded, but didn't speak. He wanted to reach across the table. He wanted to pull off the mask, reveal who he really was, and tell her, it's over. Rick is done. The nightmare ends today. But not yet. Not here. Not like this. He needed to do it the right way, with purpose, with impact, because this wasn't just about a manager abusing power. This was about a system that had forgotten what it meant to lead with heart. And Elliot Granger, the man behind the empire, was about to remind everyone. It was Monday morning, and the Silver Spoon diner buzzed, with its usual rhythm, orders flying, coffee pouring, the scent of sizzling bacon, weaving through the air. Jamie was on autopilot, tired and disheartened. The weight of losing her weekend shifts sat heavy on her shoulders. She hadn't yet figured out how to explain it to Mason. Mommy made someone mad wasn't the kind of bedtime story she wanted to tell. At exactly 9 a.m., Elliot walked in, but this time, not in disguise. No hoodie, no cap. He wore a charcoal gray blazer, a pale blue button-down shirt, and polished black shoes. His hair was combed neatly, his posture tall, confident. The transformation was stark, almost harrowing. He looked like someone from a different world. Rick noticed first, his brow furrowed, as he watched the stranger march in with purpose, eyes scanning the room. Jamie looked up as well, and froze. "Good morning," Elliot said, his voice calm but resonant, loud enough for everyone in the diner to hear. "I'm looking for Jamie Lynn Carter." Her name echoed off the metal counters and linoleum floor. Yamia blinked, stepping cautiously from behind the counter. I'm Jamie." He smiled gently. "We've met. But I wasn't exactly honest with you." Whispers rippled through the diner. The two cashiers exchanged wide-eyed glances. Rick stepped forward, his voice laced with irritation. "Sir, if there's a problem, you can talk to me. I'm the manager here." Elliot turned to face him, then pulled a sleek leather folder from under his arm. "I know exactly who you are," he said coolly. "I'm Elliot Granger, founder and CEO of Granger Hospitality. I own this diner, and 86 others just like it." Rick's mouth dropped open. A gasp went through the room. Jamie's hand rose slowly to cover her mouth. "You, what?" Elliot turned to her, his eyes warm, sincere. "Jamie, I came here last week to observe, to see what my business had become. I didn't want anyone to recognize me, because I needed the truth, not the performance." The staff stood frozen. Customers leaned from booths, listening. "And the truth," Elliot said, his voice rising, "is that this diner doesn't run on policy. It runs on people like Jamie." He turned to the staff and pointed. "She is the heartbeat of this place. She works double shifts. She lifts others up. She gives from her own pocket, without asking for credit. And she does it all with dignity." Rick tried to interrupt. "Mr. Granger, if I could just explain." Elliot raised a hand. Firm, final. "No, Rick. I heard everything. I sat in that booth and listened while you humiliated her. For an act of compassion. That isn't leadership. That's power used the wrong way." Rick's face burned red. Elliot turned back to Jamie. "You deserve better. So here's what's going to happen." He looked around the room, then back at Rick. "Rick, as of this moment, you're terminated." Gasps filled the diner. Rick sputtered. "You can't be serious." "I've never been more serious," Elliot replied. He stepped closer to Jamie. "And you, Jamie? I'm offering you the position of general manager, not just of this location, but of our new regional training program for diner leadership. You'll set the standard for hiring, training, and most importantly compassion, with full benefits, paid time off, and a salary to match." Jamie's hands trembled. I don't know what to say." "Say yes," Elliot said simply. "Because someone like you should be running things. And I want every diner in my company to have someone like you, setting the tone." Tears welled in Jamie's eyes. Slowly, she nodded. Yes, I'd be honored." The diner erupted into applause. Customers clapped. Staff cheered. Elliot smiled. Justice had finally walked through the front door, and it came with coffee and a heart full of change. 2 weeks later, the Silver Spoon diner looked and felt completely different. It wasn't just the fresh coat of paint on the walls, or the upgraded espresso machine humming behind the counter. It wasn't the new light fixtures, or the repaired jukebox that now softly played old Motown hits. The real change was in the atmosphere. Brighter, warm, hopeful, and at the center of it all stood Jamie Lynn Carter. She wore a navy blazer over her blouse now, her hair in soft waves, instead of the tight, rushed bun from before. A small gold nameplate pinned to her jacket read, "Regional Manager, Training and Staff Development." But the biggest change wasn't what she wore. It was how she stood. For the first time in years, Jamie walked with her head high. Not from pride, but from purpose. Elliot had kept every promise. The very next morning after the reveal, she received a formal offer letter, a relocation stipend, and access to a mentorship program for rising leaders in the company. She'd even met with corporate HR via Zoom, where they asked her to help design new employee training standards, ones that prioritized kindness, fairness, emotional intelligence. She now spent part of her week at Silver Spoon's flagship training center in Hillside, working with new hires and team leads. The rest of her time, she was still at the Oak Falls location, but now, she ran it. And she ran it well. Gone was Rick. In his place, a new assistant manager, a young single mom Jamie had mentored for years, finally given her shot. Jamie didn't just change jobs, she changed lives. One of the first things she did as manager was start a pay it forward drawer, where staff and customers could discreetly contribute to cover meals for those who couldn't afford them. It wasn't policy, it was heart, and under Jamie's leadership, heart became standard. One afternoon, Jamie sat across from Elliot in her office, a tiny room that used to be a janitor's closet, now filled with post-it notes, training binders, and a tiny potted plant Mason had given her. "I still feel like I'm dreaming," she said, looking out at the bustling diner floor. Elliot smiled. "You're not dreaming. You just finally got what you always deserved." She turned to him, eyes glassy, but steady. "Why me?" He leaned forward. "Because in a world where people chase profit, you never forgot people. You led without a title. You gave when you had nothing. That's the kind of leader I want running my company." Yamia sat back, trying to process it all. "You know," she said, "I used to stay up at night, worrying about how I'd pay the light bill, or how I'd explain to Mason why we couldn't afford field trip money. And now, I get to tuck him in, without that weight pressing on my chest." Elliot nodded slowly. "That's what real success looks like." Jamie smiled softly. "He asked me the other day if I was famous now." Elliot chuckled. "Well, maybe not famous, but you're a hero to a lot of people." Jamie glanced out the window again, where one of her trainees was showing a nervous new hire how to refill the soda machine. "Then I better make sure I keep earning it," she said. Elliot stood and offered his hand. "You already have." They shook hands, but it felt like more, like passing a torch to someone who'd already been holding it all along, just waiting for someone to see the light. Jamie wasn't just managing a diner, she was rebuilding a culture. One sandwich, one shift, one soul at a time. 1 year later, the Silver Spoon Diner was now the jewel of the Granger hospitality chain. Under Jamie's guidance, 10 new regional training programs had launched. Staff turnover dropped by nearly half. Customer reviews glowed with praise, not just for the food, but for the kindness that radiated from the people who served it. Jamie had moved into a modest but beautiful home just outside of Oak Falls. Mason had his own room, a backyard, and a telescope Jamie bought him for his 8th birthday. On clear nights, they'd lie on the grass together, searching the stars, dreaming bigger. Elliot still visited from time to time, never in disguise. He wasn't just the CEO now, he was a mentor, a friend, the man who had remembered what it meant to listen. One chilly October evening, after closing time, Yami sat alone at a booth, sipping tea. One of the newer waitresses passed by and asked, "How did you get this job anyway? What made them pick you?" Jamie smiled softly, eyes full of memory. "I gave a sandwich to a stranger." The girl laughed, not understanding, but Jamie did, because sometimes it's not the big gestures that change your life. It's the small acts of kindness, the ones you give when no one's watching. Compassion is never wasted, even in a world that overlooks the good and rewards the loud. True kindness plants seeds that bloom in ways we can't always see. Whether you're behind a counter or behind a corporation, the heart you lead with is the legacy you leave behind. And sometimes, giving one sandwich can change the course of a life, including your own.